There is a war going on, a spiritual war, a war between truth and deception. Only one thing cuts through all the lies and opinions of man. It's the truth of an ancient book. It is God's word. It is God's sword.
Go with me to Jeremiah chapter 24 this evening. Jeremiah, the 24th chapter, and let's resume our journey through Jeremiah that we left off the very beginning of December for the sake of our focus on the incarnation and the atonement. That was our focus through Christmas. It's a new year. Let's resume this journey. I'll try to not answer. I know everybody, you guys, I appreciate you being here tonight, and every one of you being dear friends and interested in how the trip went are all going to say the same thing. How'd the trip go? How was the trip? Appreciate that. I want to answer everybody. I'd just like to not do it several hundred times. I just want to do it. I want to try to focus on Sunday morning, try to make a decent presentation. One thing I will tell you that really stood out to me, a couple things, actually. There are, of the, 240 plus people that were taken hostage, captured, captives, women and children, old people included. All but now, I think 136 have been returned, have been set free, but it's been a while. That most of those were in around the 50th day. It's been over 93 days now, actually 95, I think, today, since they were taken captive. And it's pretty heavy. The whole thing is really heavy. But there's another reality as well, and that is that the people, the Palestinian people of Gaza, men, women, and children, and among them, Christians, are also captives and have been for a very long time. Have been captives of a terrorist organization that has completely taken over their tiny little piece of land. And all of the millions and billions of dollars that have come pouring in to Gaza to help those people have not reached those people, have been stolen from them by a terrorist organization that has spent all of it entrenching themselves, have spent all of that in engineered tunnels, a network, a city beneath the city, where they could use that population as human shields and as hostages. They have invested all of the humanitarian aid that has come, I mean that, all of it, into weaponry to attack Israel. And my heart goes out. I really am burdened for the people of Gaza, as well as the victims of this attack that happened against Israel. And we had the opportunity to share a meal. There were about 16 of us, and we had the chance to sit down at one big table with Joel Rosenberg, whom I'm fairly well acquainted with, and I've been from a distance amazed at the favor the Lord has given Joel and all the doors that God has opened to him. And the Lord has really raised him up and given him a voice in Israel, the Israeli government, receptive to him. And he has had some degree of success in influencing the Israeli government, who then, that affects the orders given to the IDF with regard to the plight of Christians caught over there on the Gaza side. And one of the things that I've learned in the course of all of this, in case you don't know this, surely you have good news sources. You're all aware because our own government has shown us here, our own federal government, state government, have shown us their capacity to lie to us about numbers. You remember, as we went through the COVID insanity, the tyranny, and the way they wanted to stoke fears, between their lies and the lies of big pharmaceutical companies, we know what it's like to be lied to. It's not beyond any of us to imagine a government that lies. Well, just for the record, there aren't any war correspondents, there are no news legitimate news sources on the Gaza side of this current war. Anything you're hearing at all, any number that you hear, any story you hear about the plight of civilians, women and children, from that side, all of that is coming from Hamas officials. It's the terrorists delivering information. Nobody talks on that side except Hamas officials. Just so you know, there's no. So if you hear it on CNN, that's not likely here at Calvary, right? Probably. If you're like me, you only ever check out them to see what they're saying, just to see how whacked out they are. If you're hearing anything on CNN, you hear it on Fox News Channel or anywhere else, and they tell you something that happened on that side, just know for sure, none of them have war correspondents in there witnessing that. That's what they're being told. Early on in this, you heard about a hospital that supposedly Israel bombed, killed 500 people. And immediately, as soon as it was verified that the bomb that had the hospital parking lot came from Gaza, from Hamas, the casualty numbers dropped dramatically. Just a few, just a couple. And that's how things are. So much deception, so many lies. So it's a truth versus deception war, as it always is, as it continues to be. And I saw things, and I must tell you, there are times I wanted to just be sad. There were times I really wanted to just be sad, and I couldn't be. I was too busy being mad, too busy being full of anger. I was so outraged at what happened. I guess it's not my own experience. I know that the other pastors that were with me, again, found ourselves burning with longing for justice to be done. Compassion, I certainly had that. And there were times where I could, the plight of a father whose hand I took in my hand, and despite our language barrier, he allowed me and us to pray for him. A father who actually received the good news that his son was one of the hostages. That's how bad things are when you discover your son is a hostage, and it's good news because you thought he was dead. Because everybody he was with were all murdered. He'd been at that Nova Music Festival, and they were all killed. Their bodies were found. He had been listed among the missing until a couple of days before we got there. And this dad now has the good news, if you can call it that his son is actually being held as a hostage. And we prayed for him. And my heart to visit them and those parents and all the family members that are involved at that hostage square that sort of just came together in the middle of Tel Aviv. Try to imagine what it's like to be them and to be absolutely helpless. To be helpless and you can't do anything. People you love, your family. Imagine that your son, your daughter has been taken. You know who took them, but you can't get them back. You don't know what kind of conditions. You only know that they've been taken by people that really hate you and are brutally cruel. The same people who raped and beheaded and slaughtered have taken your son, your daughter, or your mother, or your spouse. And you're on the side, and you can't get over there. You can't. Most of us men in this room would probably lose our mind and go over that line and get killed quickly and do them no good at all. But to keep your senses and to just go to Tel Aviv, to go and apply pressure to your government and world governments, to do everything you can to get the word out that your son, your daughter is a prisoner, to make their faces come before the whole world, to show everybody. Imagine that. Try to put yourself there and have empathy for that plight. And man, then your father heart or your mother heart, brother heart will then have true empathy with them, and you find yourself praying. So Eric has a plan. Eric's going to put together faces and names of those still held captive and make those available this Sunday morning in the back. So you can take pick one. Maybe you can't. Maybe you praying for 130 plus names daily is too much. Just pick one. Just adopt one. Take one, and just pray. Do you know that? I think it was, in fact, Warren Wiersbe who said it, and it's profoundly true, that Christians are frequently saying things like, "I feel so helpless. You know what? At least I can pray for you. At least I can do." No. Wiersbe says, no, the most we can do is pray. We don't realize it's not the least we can do, it's the most we can do. No, you certainly, they are looking for somebody who knows somebody in power that we could make an appeal to. We know that we can go straight to the top, to the whole universe. We have been given unique access as Christians through the name of the Son of God into the throne room, into the very presence of God, and we can take those names there with us in prayer. So if you guys would gear up for that, I think it would be a good thing. It would be a blessing. It would be good for all of us. And then we'll seek to connect you to the same sources online in order that you might actually get updates and know the plight of those people that are in that list that we're going to pray for. Going to the 24th chapter of Jeremiah, you might want to bring the lights down just long enough on the front here, Mike, so you can allow me to throw these points up, and it'll be brief, and we'll bring the lights back up. It was, in fact, the Scottish historian Alexander Tytler who chronicled this cycle in his work, The Cycle of Nations. The Cycle of Nations, I've seen it, and perhaps you've seen it as well. I know Bob McEwen puts it in a circle, cycle of the body politic. This actually happens where people go from the state of bondage into spiritual growth, usually, crying out to the Lord. You see it in Israel's history. We have the recorded history of this nation. They go from bondage to they cry out to the Lord, and they experience spiritual growth, and that, produces faith. And secondly, from spiritual growth, they go to great courage, and that faith produces, some action. Certainly happened here in America. Bondage to spiritual growth, a great revival happened. We call it the Great Awakening. And it produced faith, and faith produced courage, and then from courage to liberty, freedom. People go from courage, it's got to be earned, it's got to be fought for. And from liberty to abundance, because freedom produces prosperity. Freedom produces wealth. The greater the freedom, what's that former Congressman McEwen always says? The greater the freedom, the greater the wealth. The greater the government, the greater the bondage. It only works that way every time. And he's right. From liberty, though, to abundance, and from abundance to complacency. From complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence. And from dependence, right back to bondage, like a cycle. A cycle, you can bring the lights back up, by the way, a cycle which generally takes about 2 centuries. It takes about that many generations, historically, in the world that you and I live in. It would seem to me that our own nation has had its 2.5 centuries, and we certainly can relate to what we have just read in that cycle. Well, Israel, in their cycles, in this cycle in which they experience blessing and freedom and prosperity, the blessing and all the blessings promised by God and the covenant that he invited them into, the covenant which they agreed to. And in that covenant, they experience God blessing their fields. They're an agricultural people, and their economy is completely dependent upon that. They're not while they are in a prime location to do commerce with the world. They're at the intersection of the continents of Europe, Africa, and Asia. They're in a place where certainly there's an opportunity for trading or to facilitate. But truthfully, according to the whole arrangement of God, their particular prosperity would only be the result of God blessing their farming. Farming, harvesting. And for that farming to be blessed, they needed one thing in that land, that semi-desert. All they needed on that particular spot, that little green or potentially green spot on the eastern side of the Mediterranean, all they needed was rain. And God promised to send the rain. If they would remain true to their covenant with him, he would send them the rain. He would send the blessing and would give them the strength to rebuke all of the devourers of their fields, their harvest. Those devourers might be nomadic people like the Amalekites that would just, allow them to labor and produce. And then when it's time to harvest, in come the Amalekites. Slaughters everybody, and they take everything that they've worked for. Such was the plight of, the nation of Israel when Gideon was judge. And, God would raise up leaders and heroes, but it was the deal. The devourers would be either human, or sometimes the devourer would be a mold or a blight, a plant disease, or a drought. Just the rain withheld. Without the rain, they're not like the Egyptians, who are able to, because they have this water source, the Nile, running through. Despite the fact that Egypt is so much desert, they have the Nile and they have ways to irrigate. Israel doesn't have that, not so much. They have the topography is such that even their greatest water source, the Galilee, is 600 feet below sea level. There's no way to bring that water up, and the Jordan River itself runs right down the Rift Valley, the lowest place, not only in Israel, but the lowest place in the earth, where it terminates down in what we call the Salt Sea. And so there's no channeling the Jordan River to irrigate. They were dependent upon rain coming from the sky. They were dependent upon a cycle. They were in a unique relationship with the Creator, who's in charge of such things, who is able to rebuke all of the devourers, able to give them strength and bless them and protect them from invasion, protect them from their enemies. They were completely dependent upon him to send that rain. And so the cycle would happen. And they would turn to the Lord, cry out to God, and experience God's blessing, God's deliverance. He'd rescue them. They'd experience blessing, and they'd forget about him and the blessing. They'd forget about him and the prosperity. They'd get all lost in it, and they would turn their back on God. And then, before you know it, they would engage in idolatry. And what's the deal with idols? Okay, in case you don't know this, I'm going to tell you something you might not know. What would attract them to idols? Same thing that attracts our people, our generation, to idols. Every single idol, every single false god is connected to a vice and worshiped with and by that very vice. They would get all interested and all intrigued and seduced into engaging with these so-called gods. They're not real gods at all. Of fertility. Well, you can imagine how you worship a god of fertility. Among other things, you engage in sexual immorality. And other gods would be worshipped in other ways, but it's either an intoxicant, a vice, to get you drunk, and you worship that particular deity, or it would be through violence, or it would be through, you want to feed the greed and worship a god which later the Lord Jesus would mention, the god Mammon, which is the god of wealth or greed. You engage in vice to do that. Even in the New Testament, Greco-Roman culture, Gentile towns like Corinth, the Apostle Paul would have to confront this reality among the Christians, because Christian men were going to pagan temples and engaging in sexual intercourse with temple prostitutes. and that connection to the idols, and the connection to the demonic. Do you understand that the demonic realm was using vice to seduce people? Such was the case in Israel. And they would do this. They'd get drawn away after those false gods because of the vices connected to them. The true and living God, He, in His love for us, gives us prohibitions. He gave us His commandments. You've heard surely you guys have heard that modern Americans, there are plenty of them who would like to do away with our Constitution. And one of their great frustrations, you listen to the hardcore, truly hardcore leftist, is they hate the Constitution because all it does is tell us what the government can't do. They complain it. That's a good thing. They want a new Constitution that'll tell us what the government can do. Well, we already know what the government can do. Everything that our Constitution doesn't say it can't do. Did you follow what I just said? You don't need to write what the government's able to do if the government already understands what its limitations are. And that's important. Those limitations are more important than any prohibitions. That sentiment was shared by people with regard to Yahweh, the God of Scripture, the God that called Israel into the covenant. Their complaint was, His prohibitions. He expects us to be faithful in marriage. He actually, counts one of the big 10. One of the big 10 of His commands. You don't cheat on your spouse. You don't do it. You don't steal. You don't bear false witness. Think about those things that God prohibited in those 10 commands. And, 2 tables of the law. One dealing with our obligation to our fellow man, the other dealing with our obligation to God. Well, people wanted to be free of that, those things. And so the thing it caused Israel to continually drift again, being seduced by what the other gods that are no gods at all would let you do. And not only let you do, not only sanction it. Those other gods would potentially bless you. They give you the promise anyway of blessing you if you appease them. The frustration for a true prophet like Jeremiah was that he had a message, he was given a message, and he lives in a period of time in the cycle. Jeremiah's ministry is in a period of time where they have gone from apathy to complacency to apathy, and apathy, they're moving into this period. They're going to experience judgment. It's going to cost them. But they don't listen to him. Jeremiah chapter 24. All that was introduction. Verse 1, Jeremiah said, the Lord showed me, and behold, 2 baskets of figs were set before the temple of the Lord, after that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away captive Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, the princes of Judah, the carpenters, the smiths, from Jerusalem, and had brought them to Babylon. So we have then here a clue as to exactly when this had taken place, because it's a well-known period of time. It's about 605 BC. It's an interesting period of time that Jeremiah's ministry happens in. He identifies here that God showed him 2 baskets of figs. And when? It was after Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away captive the first wave of captives. He took the princes, took the royalty of Israel, the nobility, but he also took with him what here the King James Version calls carpenters or smiths. And ultimately, all of the craftsmen or anybody who could build weapons, anybody who could forge a blade was taken. They were truly weakened. So their leadership was taken, and all of their craftsmen that could actually build a weapon. Anybody who could lead an army, anybody who could equip an army. So they've been truly left helpless. 605 BC, writes our brother David Guzik in his commentary on this particular chapter, was significant in world history and also in biblical history, He writes, in world history, the Egyptians had been overwhelmed at Carchemish, and we read about that in Jeremiah chapter 46. In modern, the region today known as Turkey, modern Turkey, near the Syrian border, so up above Israel, the Egyptians had been put to chase by the Babylonians. They fled. But Nebuchadnezzar himself had to leave. Though he came to Jerusalem, he had to leave quickly because his father had died, and this was the first year of his reign in Babylon. So it's very probable that this prophecy came in between these events. So we're told when this happened, and we're told more about what Jeremiah had been shown. Verse 2, one basket of those two baskets, one basket had very good figs, even like the figs that are first ripe. And the other basket had, well, this is the King James Version. You have the King James Version. It had very naughty figs. Naughty little figs. Very naughty figs, which could not be eaten. They were so bad. We talk different now. We use that word a little different, but they were nasty. Okay? They were awful. They were vile. Very, very naughty figs. And then said the Lord unto me, what seest thou, Jeremiah? I said, figs. Good figs, very good. And the evil, very evil, that cannot be eaten, they are so evil. Nasty figs. So you can imagine, there's fruit you've seen that is appealing. You've seen fruit, it makes you just want to eat it. Oh, I have. I have indeed. I just came back. I have to confess to you that I ate on your behalf. All of you. They were so hospitable. They were so glad to see us. They really were. They fed us well. Now, they didn't force me to eat. I don't want to create that impression. But I did receive. And all the fruit. You guys understand where we live up here in this northeast corner of North America. Our fruit and our produce. Unless we've grown it ourselves, and there's that period of time in our summer when we can get a lot of fresh stuff. Everything else has been shipped to us with the hope that it's going to maybe ripen on the way. You guys know that, right? And we're blessed. I don't mean to imply we're not blessed. I don't want to complain. Eric and I were together on this flight coming back from Tel Aviv to Boston. So 11 hours plus. We landed. I got to say, all of humanity is pretty good at complaining. But nobody's as good as the Jews. They're the best complainers. I'm telling you, those people that Moses had to put up with, the murmurers. We landed 30 minutes too early. So, customs, border agents, nobody is there yet at work. So we had to wait in a relatively comfortable climate inside a big Airbus where we all have a seat. And, the captain says, if you don't mind just staying in your seat, we'll just wait for them to get to work. And we actually Eric and I heard the same guy going, why is this? Why does this keep happening? Why can't we just leave 30 minutes later? What? Why do we have to be 30 minutes early? Complaining about being 30 minutes early. That was funny. That was really funny. I could not help. I just kept thinking of Moses and his plight with a whole generation of about 1 million of those. I'm not complaining. We were fed so good. I'm not complaining about the produce that we get here. We're rich. We're Americans. We're blessed. I'll tell you, the fruit that they produce in Israel, that land. They're the number 3 producer of produce in the world, in this little tiny landmass. Oh, you ought to see it. You ought to see the greenness of that climate. This climate, it's just so pleasant. Even in January, driving from Jerusalem down into the region near Gaza. Actually, I've gone places the last few days. I had never been in Israel. All my visits have been significantly biblical sites up and around Jerusalem and Galilee, and up around Mount Carmel. Hadn't been down in this area. And it's beautiful, the farmland. All the fields are green. The land is so well managed now. It really is. It's something to see but the fruit, I'm telling you, there is fruit there that calls to you. You look at it and you just think, I gotta have it. It could be figs, could be citrus, oranges for breakfast. And, oh, it's so good. Just thinking about that. Well, I'm reading Jeremiah's words. He goes, I see good figs. He goes, very good figs. Did you see this? Did you see what Jeremiah said? Figs, the good figs, very good. Oh, you understand that sentiment, that passion? Jeremiah's looking at figs going, I want to eat them. I want to eat them all. And they're good figs. And then there's other ones, very evil figs, evil. I mean, you can look at them and just go, don't even want to get involved with those figs. Evil, very, very naughty figs. You understand? So evil they cannot be eaten. They are so evil. It's nasty. I don't know what that looked like. Were they crawling with worms? Were they just emanating the decomposition and the methane generated? You surely at some point in your life reached into a bag of potatoes and encountered a rotten potato. Have you? Have you not had a rotten potato? You would be shocked. Those of you who have never come into contact with a rotten potato, you'd be shocked at how nasty a potato can get, how horrible. It's weird that it can be so vile and smell so bad. Just reach in there. It's all squishy. You pull out your hand. You don't take it anywhere near your face. It's vile. It's horrible, terrible, repulsive thing. God. I was on a bus the other day, and Eric caught me smelling my own hands. and I realized, he was looking at me like, it's the fish from breakfast. It's just fishy. It smells good. I like it. Salmon. He goes, I was wondering, what are you doing? You've ever dealt with a rotten potato or a rotten egg? Rotten chicken egg. Pretty nasty. I don't know so much about figs, but I know Jeremiah's words. Evil, very evil, so that they cannot be eaten. They're so evil. So he's looking at two baskets, and one is, the other one is, ugh. It's right there at the temple, right? Verse 4, and again the word of the Lord came to me, saying, thus saith the Lord, this is Yahweh talking, the God of Israel, like these good figs, so will I acknowledge them that are carried away captive of Judah, whom I have sent out of this place into the land of the Chaldeans for their good. That first exile, it looked quite tragic to those who in the land saw them taken away. But God's informing Jeremiah that actually is the remnant. That's actually the remnant, that first wave of captives. I have sent them out of this land for their good. In verse 6, for I will set mine eyes upon them for good. I will bring them again to this land, and I will build them and not pull them down. I will plant them and not pluck them up. And so it would turn out that would be the case for all of the captives. All of Israel that goes into the captivity, they would experience blessing and favor. We'll see that when we get up to a few chapters up in Jeremiah chapter 29. Well, God will tell them, I got a plan for you there. I got a plan for you. Just do business and seek the good of the city where I have sent you to dwell. Pray for its peace, because in its peace you'll have peace. And so it would be that the 70 years of captivity for those in captivity would not diminish them, but they would actually get rich. In fact, sadly, they would enrich themselves to such a degree that some of them would not leave and return back. When in the days of Nehemiah, in the days of Ezra, there was a returning. So it may have looked like a terrible thing. They've been taken away from the place that they want to be, but it was a mercy. God said, I will plant them and not pluck them up. I will build them, again in that 6th verse. And he said in verse 7, I'll give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I'll be their God, for they shall return unto me with their whole heart. So God, knowing the future, seeing ahead, announces what he is going to do with those captives. But then likewise in verse 8, and as the evil figs which cannot be eaten, they are so evil. How about them? Surely, thus saith the Lord, so will I give Zedekiah the king of Judah, and his princes, and the residue of Jerusalem that remain in this land, and them that dwell in the land of Egypt, and I'll deliver them to be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth for their hurt, to be a reproach and a proverb, a taunt and a curse. In all places whither I shall drive them. And I will send the sword and famine and pestilence among them till they be consumed from off the land that I gave to them and to their fathers. Now why is God doing this? It's judgment that they have rejected, they have not listened, they refused to listen, and ultimately it's going to cause them, God sees good figs and bad figs. Listen, the culling thing, this is not new. And it's not the only place in the whole Bible where it happens. And even all the way up into the Gospels, even all the way in the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, John the Baptist comes preaching to the same people, to the same nation that had actually come back from Babylon and had grown and prospered, and centuries had passed. And John the Baptist says, the axe is already laid at the root of the tree. Every tree that does not bring forth good fruit is going to be cut down and cast into the fire. He said of Messiah that was coming, his fan, that's the fork that you thresh the wheat out with, it's in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor, the threshing floor. You purge the wheat. What's the goal? Separation. Separating wheat from chaff. And he goes, and the chaff, he'll burn it up with unquenchable fire, but the wheat he'll gather into his garner, his barn, King James Version, into his garner. And so it is. Now, the Lord Jesus likewise separates. He tells us in the 25th chapter of Matthew, all of that discourse, the day will come that he, as king, will come, and he will separate the nations. He will separate whole nations like a shepherd separates sheep from goats. You know that, right? The goats go to the left. Left bad. And the goats go to the right. I'm sorry, the sheep go to the right. Goats go to the left. Messed that up, trying to be cute. He separates sheep from goats. But the goats, the stubborn, they go to his left. And when it's all said and done, he judges them for what they did to Israel, what they didn't do. And the other nations, he blesses them for what they did or did not toward Israel. What you did unto the least of these, my people, you did unto me. What you did unto the least of these, my brethren. You did it or you didn't do it. So anyway, separation happens, and God certainly sees in this plain, clear sort of dichotomy. Yes. Sadly, right now, you guys, under the modern world, Western civilization that was once under the influence of this holy book, has come under the influence of social theorists, particularly centered in Frankfurt, Germany, and all of this critical theory, whether it's critical gay theory, queer theory, critical race theory, whatever, all this critical theory junk, all does one thing, and it creates a false dichotomy. False dichotomy that everybody's either the oppressor or they are the oppressed. They're part of the oppressors or they're part of the oppressed. Or maybe, if you're fortunate enough, you're one of the woke allies of the oppressed. You're in opposition to the so-called oppressor. That dichotomy is foolish. All of humanity is not so divided into this dichotomy. The world's more complicated than that. That very dichotomy that has been so inbred into the thinking of our students in our educational system is what has produced the sudden bursting out of anti-Semitism, hatred for Israel, because they see things in this stupid dichotomy. As far as they're told, those who are doing their thinking for them, Israel's the oppressor, and these Palestinians are the oppressed. Well, Palestinians are, in fact, oppressed, but it isn't Israel doing the oppressing. The so-called organizations like the PLO, they're supposed to stand for them. Hamas, they don't stand for those people. They rob those people. The tyranny that they exercise over those people is awful. So I'm saying the lies that are being told to the American public at present all come right down to that dichotomy. Well, God sees a plainer dichotomy. He sees those who he will judge and those he will keep as a remnant and he will bless. There are those that God has good in store for, and there are those that God has judgment in store for them. And so that's what we see here in chapter 24. By the way, it's going to come in the form of, when God says in that 10th verse, I will send them the sword, famine, the pestilence among them till they be consumed from off the land that I gave them and to their fathers. How is it going to come? It would actually be proved out in a continued refusal to listen to the prophets and a continual refusal to submit. You'll see Jeremiah is given a message. He's going to say, listen, he's going to say to his people, to this generation, you've got to accept the reign of the Babylonians as God has allowed it. Surrender. Don't try to fight him. Don't assume that God's on your side. He's not. Mend your ways. Turn from your idolatry. And accept this as the judgment of God. And they're going to call him a traitor for saying it. And they'll listen to fools that'll say no. They'll listen to false prophets that'll say God. They'll listen to those who are positive and encouraging and lying while they're doing it. And they'll have the courage to dare to either flee instead of submitting to Babylon. They'll either try to resist. There'll be another siege. People will starve. The sword comes. Or they'll flee down into Egypt. But the sword, they won't escape the sword. They'll be hunted down. And Jeremiah speaks. You'll see as we read on. He's going to actually tell us how this goes. In chapter 25, verse 1, the word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah. And this was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the which Jeremiah the prophet spake unto all the people of Judah and to all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, saying, from the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, even unto this day, that is the 23rd year, the word of the Lord hath come unto me, and I have spoken unto you, rising early and speaking, but you have not hearkened. Listen, there are prophets, like earlier mentioned, John the Baptist, who will come later. There are prophets like Elijah. There are other prophets that are just fiery and bold and powerful. And there's other prophets. God's got quite a variety of these guys. And some of them are quite eccentric. They're like crazy actors, mimes, and poets. And there are others who, like Jeremiah, are timid and reluctant and weepy, being sent to say things that they don't want to say, delivering a hard message. Jeremiah just said, I've been 23 years doing this. So if it's the 23rd year of Jeremiah's ministry, he's only about half done. He doesn't know that yet. 23 years, I'm sure it seemed like a lot, right, to him at that time. He's only halfway through his very long prophetic ministry. 23 years, and you don't listen. Verse 4, the Lord hath sent unto you all his servants the prophets, rising early and sending them, but you have not hearkened nor inclined your ear to hear. They said, turn ye again now everyone from his evil way, from the evil of your doings, and dwell in the land that the Lord has given unto you and to your fathers forever and ever. And go not after other gods to serve them and to worship them, and provoke me to anger with the works of your hands, and I will do you no hurt. Jeremiah said, this is the message we've all delivered. But you have not hearkened unto me, saith the Lord, that you might provoke me to anger with your works of your own hands to your own hurt, building their own little statues and saying, no, never mind you, God, Yahweh, never mind you, God of creation. We're going to make up a new one that we like better. And you see, your works of your hands, you're provoking me to anger, to your own hurts. Chapter 25, verse 8, therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, because you've not heard my words, behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith the Lord. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, my servant. Whoa, that's heavy right there. God calls this pagan king his servant, uses his name through the prophet Jeremiah, and calls it. You got to understand this. Try to imagine this. Some world tyrant, like, I don't know, I'm just saying, like, for example, Vladimir Putin. He's a wicked man. He's a tyrant, a bully. Imagine a prophet saying, that's God's servant, and he's executing judgment. Imagine how that prophet would be received. That's how Jeremiah was received. They were like, how dare you speak that way? But God actually said, the guy's my servant. Yeah, he's doing my bidding, bringing judgment. And God will say, when I'm done with him, I'm going to judge him. He will say that as we read on. My servant, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Verse 9, I'll read it again. Behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith the Lord. And Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land and against the inhabitants thereof and against all these nations round about, and I will utterly destroy them, make them an astonishment and a hissing and perpetual desolations. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth. In other words, the party is over. The voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, the voice of the bride, the sound of the millstones, and that's all commerce, right? The light of the candle. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. If you guys read the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 9, Daniel informs us that he actually knew how long he had been there. He knew how he had access to the writings of Jeremiah, and he knew that when you go to Daniel chapter 9, that the 70 years was about completed, and that God was going to let them go, return them. So Daniel, he knew from what we're reading right here, 70 years are accomplished, and I will, he says, verse 12, it shall come to pass when the 70 years are accomplished that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity, the land of the Chaldeans, and I will make it a perpetual desolations. And that has been, by the way, that was accomplished, and you can visit the archaeological ruins of Babylon. There is no modern Babylon, despite Saddam Hussein's attempt to revive it, rebuild it in the modern age. Well, you know how that ended for him. Perpetual desolations, in verse 13, and I will bring upon that land all my words which I have pronounced against it, even all that is written in this book, which Jeremiah hath prophesied against all the nations. For many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of them also, and I will recompense them according to their deeds and according to the works of their own hands. So maybe, God says, I raise up this empire. The Babylonians and its king, Nebuchadnezzar, they are my servant. They're going to do my will. They're going to bring judgment. And when I'm done, I'll judge them. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, verse 15, unto me. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel unto me, take the wine cup of this fury at my hand, cause all the nations to whom I shall send thee to drink it. They shall drink and be moved and be mad, because of the sword that I will send among them. Then took I the cup in the Lord's hand, and made all the nations to drink unto whom the Lord had sent me. This is all in the vision Jeremiah is given. To wit, Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, and the kings thereof, and the princes thereof, to make them a desolation and an astonishment, a hissing and a curse, as it is this day. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and his servants, his princes, and all his people, and all the mingled people, and all the kings of the land of Uz, and the kings of the land of the Philistines, and Ashkelon. By the way, that town, Ashkelon, which was the Philistine sort of headquarter, is still in Ashkelon. Still there, went by it just the other day, and it's still called Ashkelon. And Azah and Ekron, remnant of Ashdod. Ashdod also there still, by the way. Edom and Moab, the children of Ammon. And all the kings of Tyrus, and all the kings of Zidon, kings of the isles which are beyond the sea, Dedan, Tema, Buz, and all that are in the utmost corners, and all the kings of Arabia, and the kings of the mingled people that dwell in the desert, And all the kings of Zimri, all the kings of Elam, and the kings of the Medes. It's funny, the Medes are mentioned, and they weren't even a significant people yet. They would rise to become half of an empire, the Medo-Persian Empire. But verse 26, and all the kings of the north, far and near, one with another, and all the kingdoms of the world, which are upon the face of the earth, and the king of Shishak shall drink after them. So all of that entire region, would all of it be conquered by Babylon, and God's got his hand in the affairs of man. The rising of one empire and the falling of that same empire. Verse 27, therefore, thou shalt say unto them, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, drink ye and be drunken and spew. You relate to the statement, right? Be drunk and just hurl, man. Be drunk and vomit, fall, rise no more, because of the sword which I will send among you. And it shall be, if they refuse to take the cup at thine hand and to drink, thou shalt say unto them, thus saith the Lord of hosts, ye shall certainly drink. So it doesn't matter whether they want to receive the message, the warning that Jeremiah delivers, they're still going to experience it. Even if they don't receive it, they're still going to experience it. Verse 29, for lo, I begin to bring evil on the city which is called by my name. And should ye be utterly unpunished? God said, I am about to bring judgment down on the city I called after my own name, Jerusalem. God is going to bring judgment down on Jerusalem. He's like, if I'm going to bring judgment down there, you better believe I'm bringing it down on you wicked pagan nations. Shall you be yet unpunished? Verse 29 goes on to say, you shall not be unpunished, for I will call for a sword upon all the inhabitants of the earth, saith the Lord of hosts. Therefore prophesy thou against them all these words, and say unto them, the Lord shall roar from on high, and utter his voice from his holy habitation. He shall mightily roar upon his habitation. He shall give a shout, as they that tread the grapes against all the inhabitants of the earth. A noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for the Lord hath a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked to the sword, saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, evil shall go forth from the nation to nation, and a great whirlwind shall be raised up from the coast of the earth, and the slain of the Lord shall be at that day from one end of the earth, even unto the other end of the earth. They shall not be lamented, neither gathered nor buried. They shall be dung upon the ground. Howl ye shepherds, I'm at verse 34, and cry, and wallow yourselves in the ashes, you principal of the flock. For the days of your slaughter and of your dispersions are accomplished, and ye shall fall like a pleasant vessel. The shepherds shall have no way to flee, nor the principal of the flock to escape. A voice of the cry of the shepherd, a voice of the cry of the shepherds, and a howling of the principal of the flock shall be heard. For the Lord hath spoiled their pasture, and peaceable inhabitations are cut down because of the fierce anger of the Lord. He hath forsaken his covert as the lion. In other words, he like a lion has burst out of his den. He's acting in judgment. For the land is desolate because of the fierceness of the oppressor and because of his fierce anger. All right, check this out at the conclusion of our study. In this prophecy, God tells Jeremiah, lay this one out, God is going to be the oppressor. That's how he will be seen. And because of his fierce anger. I happen to believe that after, in the future here, after mass evacuation, the event that we call the rapture of the church, that judgment is going to come to the world. God's going to pour out his judgment. And following that judgment, 7-year period, second half of which is 3.5 years. We've read in the book of Revelation the prophetic disasters that will happen worldwide. And on the other side of all of that, the Son of God comes, the second coming of Christ. Listen to me, you guys. The second coming of Christ. There's a guy on earth, a world leader who has succeeded in winning a worldwide following. And he leads his armies quite presumptuously into the land of Israel, to the very plains of Megiddo, to the very patch of ground where the empires would meet in history for their great wars. The intersection of the continents. There's one big valley. Napoleon said it was the greatest theater for war in the whole world, where it's surrounded by higher ground of the mountains, Carmel on one side, the mountains of Upper Galilee on the other side. And then the whole thing is like a great big theater, the plains of Jezreel, the valley of Megiddo. Well, listen, there's going to be a great slaughter there. But have you thought about this? When you read, like in Revelation chapter 6, I think we read it last Sunday evening I was with you, where people are running into their bunkers. You know, we read about the Zucker bunker, Mark Zuckerberg's building in Hawaii. And the people with great power and great wealth are building these networks underground so they can survive the disaster they think is inevitable. But they seem to be quite aware. They're praying for the mountains to fall. Remember Revelation chapter 6? Praying for the mountains to fall on them, to hide them from the face of the one who's coming. For the great day of his wrath has come. Have you ever thought about the fact that the spirit of Antichrist is going to work to create that dichotomy I mentioned earlier, where you only got two sides you can be on. Either you're part of the oppressors or you're part of the oppressed. Do you realize the spirit of Antichrist is seeking to make the case to humanity even now that Christ, the true Christ, is the oppressor, and that Antichrist is the real liberator? What is it in Psalm 2 that says, the kings of the world will join together against God and against his chosen one, against his Christ, his anointed, saying, let us break his bands from us. And they're going to actually attempt a revolution. It's kind of been like that all through history. You know, humanity has been trying to overthrow God. Can't be done. But I actually believe Psalm 2, which is a messianic prophecy, speaks of the second coming of Christ. The second coming, where he will dash the nations in pieces. He'll rule with a rod of iron. He will shatter kingdoms and nations. He who sits in the heavens, Psalm 2 says, written by King David, the one sitting in the heavens laughs. He is laughing at puny humanity, pulling together all of their technology and all of their weaponry and all their little human resources to dare to challenge God. It would seem in that whole prophetic scenario that Antichrist is moving in pursuit of Israel, the Jews. They will be hunted by Antichrist. His armies come for that purpose, but then they turn to meet the kings of the East in another different conflict, another empire, China and whatever comes together for an empire in the East. Comes to confront the empire of the West, Antichrist anyway. The true Christ comes and ends it all. Do you understand that the words used by Jeremiah speak of God as the oppressor and speak of his fierce anger? That end of chapter 25. I think it's a glimpse into the future. Jeremiah is looking way beyond the sort of approaching Babylonian conquest and the judgment of God that will be the rise of that empire against all these nations that we read of, all these peoples. And he looks just a little bit beyond all of that to the end, to the actual final conflict. Just saying, the wars that have happened through history in the plains of Megiddo, it seems like a fitting thing that the very final attempted invasion, the very final sort of conflict would happen on that same patch of ground. and is brought to an end by Christ himself. Not much of a contest. It's like Godzilla versus Bambi. It's absurd. I don't refer to it as the Battle of Armageddon. There's no battle at all. It's just a slaughter. The Son of God comes. Let me just say one more time. Do you understand that Jesus Christ, who came once, humbly, riding into Jerusalem on a donkey's colt, is going to come again. Not so humbly. He's going to come again. He's going to bring the hammer down. And there's a world here. He comes to judge that thinks he's the bad guy, he's the oppressor. And the case is even being made already in the world you live in. Already. In case you don't know it, there's a version of Christianity that has been developing. Listen, persecution here in America, which will happen, and to some degree has already begun, isn't going to be happening because you're a Christian. It's going to be happening because you're not the right kind of Christian. You understand? They've reinvented this. They're reinventing Christ and reinventing Christianity. The current Pope, Francis, has given the blessing, for the approval for his priests to bless same-sex unions. You got people like Andy Stanley, professing Christian evangelical pastor down in Atlanta with a massive following, already open and affirming of sexual deviation. Do you understand? You're going to become a minority. You guys get that? I mean, even within what is called Christianity, even within religion, there's a new kind. There's been a new Jesus invented, and he's not the true one at all. He's woke Jesus. And he's not so oppressive with regard to human sexuality. He's a lot more open. The true Christ is being rejected, plotted against. Psalm 2 is actually happening. It's actually coming together. So where will you stand? Stand on the right side, because you know where it's all going to end.
Hey, thanks for listening. We pray that the Word of God will speak to your heart as you meditate on it. If we can help you grow, or if you have any questions, you can visit us at our website at ccbangor.org. Give us a phone call at area code 207-991-9555, or you can shoot us an email at office@ccbangor.org. On behalf of Pastor Ken and all of us here at Calvary Chapel Central Maine, we wish you grace and peace.